Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, so we'll continue with the chapter 5. We just started the chapter 5 last week. So just for a little recap, remember Vyasadeva is feeling very despondent, unsatisfied at heart, and then Narada Muni appears just at the right moment. And right at the very beginning, Narada Muni diagnoses two defects, two problems why Vyasadeva is feeling weak and dissatisfied. Anyone remembers what are these two defects? So one is that you didn't broadcast Krishna's glories enough, and the other one is you put too much emphasis on the Purusharthas, on the four Purusharthas. So that's, I guess in one sense, that's the diagnosis in short, and then Narada Muni will elaborate on it in more detail, but just keep this in mind. So these are the two problems with whatever Vyasadeva wrote so far. He didn't glorify Krishna enough, not repeatedly, not vividly, not prominently enough, and he gave too much emphasis to the four Purusharthas. Anyone remembers or knows what the four Purusharthas are?
Economic development, sense gratification, liberation, and what was the last one?
So Dharma is like
and religion.
So Dharma is religion or religious duty. So people do religion to get artha, money, economic development. And then they use that money, the artha, for kama, sense gratification. And then once they get frustrated with kama or they had enough, then they go for moksha, liberation. So these are called the four purusharthas: Dharma, artha, kama, moksha. Charanarinu, you had a question or a comment?
I was just going to ask actually what the four Purusharthas are. So.
Okay. So Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. We'll kind of go through it again, but the point is that he gave too much emphasis to these and too little emphasis to Krishna. Okay. So we'll continue from text 9. Yata dharmadayas charta munivaryanu kirtita natata vasudevasya mahimahya nuvarnita. Raghunath Prabhu.
Although great sage, you have very broadly described the four principles beginning with religious performances. You have not described the glories of the Supreme Personality, Vasudeva.
Okay, so again, Narada Muni emphasizes the same thing. So you have very broadly, you gave a lot of emphasis to these four principles. So it's called Dharma Adi or Dharma Adaya. So it starts with Dharma, that's why we said Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. So starting with Dharma, you really emphasize this very much, but you have not described enough. It's not that he didn't describe it at all, but it didn't give enough emphasis. So it's not elaborated, it's not repeated. And that's why it's called Anuvartita. So Anu means repeatedly, again and again, or sometimes it means following in the footsteps. So it's not described Anuvarnita and Anukirtita, repeatedly described, constantly described. So that's not happening. And again, from Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he says, he always has these conversations, background conversations going on. So then Vyasadeva says, yeah, but I did describe bhakti as higher than moksha, higher than these four principles. And Narada says, yes, but not repeatedly, not enough. And then Prabhupada in the purport, he explains that only when the Supreme Lord's glories are repeatedly described, only then one will experience Anandamaya, or this actual happiness, actual joy. Nothing else will give that happiness. So that's why it's called Sankirtan, because we say it together, we say it repeatedly. There's this nice verse in the Bhagavad Gita that devotees derive great pleasure from discussing among each other. So it's not that somebody once says Krishna is great and there is no need to ever talk about it again. So it needs to be repeated, it needs to be again and again to actually give happiness. And then Prabhupada at the end of the purport, he says the conclusion is that in order to maintain the status quo of the Brahma Bhuta stage, as also to increase the degree of transcendental realization, Narada recommended to Vyasadeva that he, Vyasadeva, should now eagerly and repeatedly describe the path of devotional service. So in the Bhagavad Gita, we know that once one rises above the modes, basically moksha, liberation, that's the Brahma Bhuta stage. But unless one engages in devotional service at that point, they fall down again, because that's just kind of just above the modes, but it doesn't, there's nothing to keep you there. There is no activity unless you start doing devotional service. Otherwise you get bored and go back to the activities of the material world. So that's why it says that to maintain this Brahma Bhuta stage, this liberated stage, and to also increase the degree of transcendental realization, that's why you need to eagerly and repeatedly describe the path of devotional service. And this is what will cure you from gross despondency. So this neutral stage, you can't stay there. You need to either go up or down. And this is also a lesson for us, that anything we do should be based on repeated glorification of Krishna. So we have a wonderful example of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who chanted 192 rounds every day, I don't know, maybe for 20 years before establishing Gaudiya Math. So that the foundation for any activity should be talking about Krishna, repeatedly describing Krishna. And this is also, we could say in one sense, Bhakti Vaibhava or Bhakti Shastri, whatever we are doing, to kind of again and again and again talk about Krishna, Krishna's glory, Krishna's greatness, the path of bhakti. So this should be the foundation of our devotional service. Otherwise it becomes dry and we lose direction, we lose a sense of where we are going, why we are doing things. So we may carry on digging holes, we may carry on going through the motions, but it becomes empty. We lose the point of why we are doing things. That's why we need to repeatedly, again and again, hear about Krishna, speak about Krishna. Okay, and then just one more nice point about Srila Prabhupada, that Prabhupada, dealt with so many things. He established ISKCON, and there was all the management and financial things and all sorts of things going on. If you read Prabhupada's letters, you can see there was a lot of things going on. And Prabhupada dealt with everything very, very efficiently. But every morning or every night, he woke up at midnight, and from midnight to 4 or 5 o'clock, he was just completely in touch with the Srimad Bhagavatam, translating the Bhagavatam. That's pure Krishna consciousness, pure bhakti. And then during the day, that's also devotional service, dealing with all the management and finance and everything else that needs to be there. But that pure connection with Krishna needs to be there for the foundation. Otherwise it becomes mundane. Okay? And then in this connection, the next two verses describe, because Vyasadeva wrote so much literature, so the question may come up, so is there any value to all this literature. So that's why the next two verses come. Nayadvachas chitrapadam harir yasho jagat pavitram pragrinita karhichit tadvaya samtirta mushanti manasa nayatra hamsa niramanchuri ushikshaya. Charanarenu?
Those words which do not describe the glories of the Lord, who alone can sanctify the atmosphere of the whole universe, are considered saintly persons, to be like unto a place of pilgrimage for crows, since the all-perfect persons are inhabitants of the transcendental abode, they do not derive pleasure there.
Thank you. So, one thing to consider before we even go into the details of the verse is that Prabhupada wrote these purports before coming to the West. So we're reading it now, ISKCON is all established, but Prabhupada just sat in Vrindavan writing these purports before any of that was established. And Prabhupada says himself that, his English is not perfect. But because, it will be more in connection with the next verse, but because it describes Krishna, then even if it's not perfect, it's the best thing to read. And then other literature, it may be very nicely decorated with alliterations and metaphors and all sorts of literary devices. But if they don't describe the glories of the Lord, then it's like a rubbish heap. It's a place of pilgrimage for crows. So crows, they go to the places where people throw out rubbish and try to get something exciting for them. So even if there is a lot of literary embellishments, the all-perfect persons, devotees, they don't derive any pleasure there. Prabhupada says it's like swans and crows. So crows, they look for these rubbish places, and the swans, they look for lotus flowers. You can even compare this kind of literature. It's very nicely decorated, but it's empty inside. So it doesn't satisfy the heart. So if you get a nice box with all flowers and butterflies, it looks really, really nice. And so you have some high expectation. It will give me pleasure. It will make me happy when I open it. And you open it and it's empty. So mundane literature is like that. It might have very nice decorations, but it doesn't actually satisfy the heart. And then spiritual literature, I'm not saying that it has to be very plain, like a cardboard box, but even if it is like a cardboard box, but it's about Krishna, then because the contents of the box are fulfilling the heart, satisfying the heart, and that gives real satisfaction. Of course, if we are able to make the box nice, it's worth making a nice box for the highest treasure. But the literary embellishments don't really matter. The contents matter. My Shivaram Swami, he writes these really beautiful books about Krishna, Navavraja Mahima, all these really nice books. And it's not just the content that's wonderful. If you look at the book itself, it's all kind of gold-leafed, and it's really, really nice binding. They're really just to kind of have not just the content, but the presentation as well, really nice. Okay. And so this was the words that don't describe the glories of the Lord. They don't actually give pleasure. And then the next verse is the opposite. The words that do describe the Lord. Tadvag visargo janataga viplavo yasmin pratishlokam abhaddhavatyapi namanyanantasya yashon kitaniyat shinvanti gayanti grinanti sadava. Brajadevi?
On the other hand, that literature which is full of descriptions of the transcendental glories of the name, fame, forms, pastimes, etc., of the unlimited Supreme Lord is a different creation, full of transcendental words directed toward bringing about a revolution in the impious lives of this world's misdirected civilization. Such transcendental literatures, even though imperfectly composed, are heard, sung, and accepted by purified men who are throughoutly honest.
So this is the opposite. So the previous one may be very decorated, but the all perfect people don't derive any pleasure there. And this may have some faults in it, but the purified men who are thoroughly honest, they hear, sing, and accept these. So this is what we should, this is the kind of literature we should read, we should rely on, we should write, this is the kind of literature that should be our shelter. So it's not that spiritual literature has to be without decorations. Some of the, you got Chaitanya Charitamrita, you got Srimad Bhagavatam, all these Rupa Goswami's poems, they're just really, really amazing. Like, they do have a lot of kind of metaphors and alliterations and lots of literary embellishments, but that's not the most important thing. That's more just the decoration on the box, the contents of the box. That's most important. And it's very interesting. It says that this kind of literature, which glorifies Krishna, it brings about a revolution in the impious life. So this word Viplava, Viplava means like an upheaval, a revolution. So this kind of literature brings about a revolution. So now this is not like the Russian Revolution or something that kind of creates chaos and destruction wherever it goes. It's just the opposite. So it creates a revolution that helps one get out of the material world and go back to Krishna. Prabhupada writes quite a long purport, and if please try to read it, study it. It's a very, very interesting, very deep purport with lots of points. I thought I would kind of mention a few of them. So one of the points Prabhupada makes here, he says, while preparing this commentation on this particular stanza of Srimad Bhagavatam, we have a crisis before us. Our neighboring friend China has attacked the border of India with a militaristic spirit. And then Prabhupada says we have no business in the political field. Previously they used to live peacefully together, but because there was more God consciousness. Now the point I want to make here is that Prabhupada wrote this commentary, I don't know, 60 years ago, 60, 70 years ago. So there was this historical event that happened then, that China attacked India. And Prabhupada used this topical event to make to kind of illustrate a philosophical point. Now, we have to be very careful because this is in Prabhupada's books, this is in Prabhupada's purports, but it doesn't mean that, okay, this is in the Srimad Bhagavatam first canto, so we have, if we are devotees, we are going to say that China is attacking India right now. Or we can only use this example because this is what Prabhupada used. It's more important to see the principle. So Prabhupada, writing this commentary, this is something that happened at the time. He used that topical event to illustrate a point in preaching. So the principle is we can do the same thing. So whatever's happening right now, whatever's in the news, we can use that to illustrate our points in preaching. It's not that we can only use China attacking India, especially right now, China is not attacking India. So when you're reading Prabhupada's books, it's important to understand what's a philosophical point and what's an example from the news or from like some cultural aspects that Prabhupada is using to illustrate the philosophical point. So don't get mixed up between the two. Did I manage to explain this understandably. Okay, so this is a good example for this. Okay. So the philosophy that can't be changed, but the examples that we use to illustrate, they can be changed to suit time, place, audience, circumstances. That's the art of preaching. So understand what's a principle that shouldn't be changed, and understand what's an example to illustrate. Okay. Another point that Prabhupada makes in the purport, that he knows that his English is not perfect, and that's one of the reasons why he wanted his books edited, so people will take it seriously. So we have this original, not like the original that Prabhupada brought over from India, but an exact reprint of the first three volumes of the first canto that Prabhupada brought over. And especially looking from 2025, Prabhupada's English is very, very different from what people use now, and even from what people were using in the 60s and 70s. It's a very Indian English, which is really, really sweet for us, but it's not what you would call the Queen's English. So Prabhupada wanted his books edited so they can be taken seriously by educated academics. He kind of makes this point that the leaders of society need to be influenced with this Krishna consciousness, and then they can help other people take up Krishna consciousness as well. But for that, it was important that the books are presented without any grammatical mistakes or in an English that's acceptable. A lot of people, more educated people, they open a book, they see 2 spelling mistakes or a grammatical mistake on the first page, they close the book, because they think that if they couldn't get it together to have it properly edited, probably the contents are not worth reading either. They don't know these 2 verses from the Srimad Bhagavatam, that it doesn't matter. And Prabhupada knew that. So that's why he wanted his books nicely edited so they are presentable. Okay. But then, having said that, he also makes this point that when there is a fire in the house, the inmates of the house go out to get help from the neighbors who may be foreigners, and yet without knowing the language of the victims of the fire express themselves, and the neighbors understand the need, even though it's not expressed in the same language. So the point Prabhupada is making here, that even if you don't speak the other person's language perfectly, somehow you make yourself understood, because it's really, really important. It's an emergency. So this Krishna consciousness is really, really important. It's an emergency, just to help people stop their suffering in the material world. So even if, Prabhupada's English wasn't perfect, even if we feel that our English is not perfect or our knowledge of the philosophy is not perfect, glorifying Krishna is more important, because it brings about a revolution, it helps people. So somehow or another, make yourself understood. Think about it as a fire, and we need to help people understand the great need, even if we don't exactly speak the same language. And then Prabhupada also speaks about kind of literature in general. He says that people want to read. I know for myself, I really, really love reading. I just read anything, if I'm having breakfast, I read the cornflakes packet, or just whatever there, letters. I really, really love reading. So we have this urge or this inclination to read, so it needs to be channeled towards Krishna. So Prabhupada also says the people in general want to read, that is a natural instinct, but because their minds are polluted, they want such literatures, meaning full of materialistic ideas of sense gratification. So that's why, if there's books like Srimad Bhagavatam that's full of Krishna's descriptions, then this urge or this inclination to read can be channeled in the right way. And this will not just stop people's minds becoming more contaminated, it also purifies the existing contamination. If you remember Ishopanishad that we did a few months ago with Bhakti Shastri, then it says glories of Krishna, or speaking about Krishna, Krishna himself both prevents infection, it's like a vaccination, and cures the already existing infection. So it's the same with reading books like Srimad Bhagavatam. And then even if at first people don't like it, if somebody has jaundice, then sugar candy tastes bitter. But even if they don't like it in the beginning, if they somehow read Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, then that will cure them. And then Prabhupada has this very positive, reassuring end to the purport. We are sure, therefore, that everyone in human society will welcome Srimad Bhagavatam. Prabhupada is very positive, even though now it's presented with so many faults. Prabhupada is also very humble. And then he says something really sweet that really catches me every time I read it. He says, "For it is recommended by Sri Narada, who has very kindly appeared in this chapter." So just this half sentence of Sri Narada, who has very kindly appeared in this chapter, it makes it so personal and so sweet that Prabhupada is not just kind of translating a book that was written 5,000 years ago and writing some dry commentaries on it, but he's there. He's kind of so absorbed in this whole Bhagavatam that, Narada very kindly appeared in this chapter. So this is something for us to aspire for as well, to become so absorbed in the Bhagavatam that we get really excited when Narada kindly appears. He will keep appearing, I think. I don't remember if he appears in the second canto, but every single canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Narada very kindly appears. So we can rely on him. Okay, so we spoke about how too much emphasis on the four Purusharthas, Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha, not enough emphasis on glorifying Krishna, not enough emphasis on Bhakti Yoga. So the next several verses will glorify Bhakti Yoga. Narada Muni will glorify Bhakti Yoga. And he will also answer the question, because Vyasadeva might say that, okay, I understand that the most important thing is glorifying Krishna, most important thing is Bhakti Yoga. But isn't it true that for most people can't immediately take to Bhakti Yoga? They need this gradual elevation of Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha, Karma Kanda, Karma Yoga, all these gradual things. So this is why I emphasize these things in the Vedas, because the jump to Bhakti would be too much. So do people not need these things before? Do they not need to become liberated first? So then the next verses will answer these questions. Charanarenu?
Sorry, I don't know if it's relevant. I was just wondering, the word Purushartha, do you know what it actually translates as?
So Purusha means human, and Artha means a benefit or something that's wanted. Like Anartha is something that's not wanted. Artha is something that's wanted. So Purushartha is things that people want. That kind of Prabhupada usually says like the four goals of human society, or in different places Prabhupada translates them or speaks about them in different ways, but this is the idea. And then Bhakti or Prema, that's called the Prema Pumarto Bhavan, the Panchama Purushartha, that's the fifth goal, which is the real goal. Panchama Purushartha. Okay. So now Narada will glorify Bhakti and say that no, we don't need any previous purification or liberation before we start doing Bhakti. Naishkarma vapyachudha bhava varjitam na shobhate jnanam alam niranjanam kutah punashashvada badram ishvare na charpitam karmayad apyakaranam. Nilachar Chandra Prabhu?
Knowledge of the self-realization even though free from all material affinity, does not look well if devoid of a conception of infallible God. What then is the use of fruitive activities which are naturally painful from the very beginning and transcend by nature if they do not utilize for the devotional service of the Lord?
Thank you. So transient means like it's not permanent. It comes and goes. Okay, so here Narada Muni makes this point that even if you teach people how to satisfy their desires religiously, they will still suffer. The only time work doesn't cause misery is when the fruits are offered to Krishna, when one works for Krishna. So even if somebody does this non-reactionary work, this naishkarmyam, even that's not good if it's devoid, varjitam, of achyuta bhava, love for achyuta, love for Krishna. So if there is no feelings of love, no feelings of affection for achyuta, for Krishna, achyuta bhava varjitam, then even naishkarmya, even self-realization, free from the reactions of fruitive work, doesn't look well. It's not actually going to help you in any way. And then it's the same with jnana. It's the same with knowledge. And then what then is the use of fruitive activity? So even if activity that's not fruitive, that doesn't have a reaction, is not appreciated, then what to speak of karmic activity that's just for sense enjoyment, that does have a reaction. So whether karma, akarma, jnana, self-realization, none of these things will give satisfaction if they are achyuta bhava varjitam, if they are without a feeling of affection, feeling of love for Krishna. And then even knowledge of Brahman, that's the kind of highest thing you can get, not even in the material world, that's kind of leading to liberation. Even that's not much appreciated because it doesn't actually satisfy the heart. That's why Prabhupada says in the previous purport that you need to go up from there. You can't stay there. Prabhupada says in this purport, when speculation on the impersonal Brahman is condemned, then what to speak of ordinary fruitive work, which is not meant to fulfill the aim of devotional service. So whether fruitive work, non-fruitive work, if it's not for Krishna, it's abhadram. Here he translates it uncongenial. Bhadra usually means auspicious, so it's not auspicious, it's not appreciated, it's full of pain. It doesn't purify the heart. So anything, karma, jnana, rituals, dharma, anything one does, if it's not in connection with Krishna, it's useless. So Vyasadeva may worry that Krishna's pastimes may be a bit too esoteric, maybe a bit difficult to understand. He's the Supreme Personality of Godhead, omniscient, he knows everything, he's all-powerful, he's the omnipotent, he's all-pervading, and he's running away from a middle-aged lady in Vraja who's holding a stick, his mom. So this may be a little bit too much for most people's brains. So it may be a bit too esoteric. People may misunderstand it, may think Krishna is an ordinary human. And that's why Narada Muni encourages him in the next verse. Vato mahabhaga bhavana mogajik suchishrava satyarato jitavrata urukramasya kilabanda muktaye samadhinano smaratad vicheshtitam. Guru Bhakti?
O Vyasadeva, your vision is completely perfect. Your good fame is spotless. You are firm in vow and situated in truthfulness. And thus you can think of pastimes of the Lord in trance for the liberation of the people in general from all material bondage.
Thank you. So in this purport again, Prabhupada speaks about, everybody wants to read. People in general have a taste for literatures. They want to know something more. So this can be channeled to help them become liberated. But if it's not channeled, then thousands and thousands of authors wrote thousands and thousands of books throughout the ages. Even Vyasadeva wrote so many books, but none of them bring actual peace and satisfaction to the heart. You know, people write books on books, you know, and they analyze, you know, what did Shakespeare want to say when he said this, and then they write a whole volume on, you know, 2 sentences that Shakespeare wrote, and then somebody else writes a commentary on that. But it's not actually satisfying. It's not actually taking you anywhere. It's just a little bit of mental titillation or mental agitation. And the reason it's not actually satisfying because the box is empty. There's a spiritual vacuum. And even the Mahabharata, in which Vyasadeva did present Bhagavad Gita, Vyasadeva did write about Krishna's glories, but first he wrote a little bit too much about Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. First wrote a little bit too much about material happiness. And then people get a bit carried away by that. And this is a very serious mistake. Okay. Tatonyata kinchana tadvivakshata pritagvishastat krita rupa namabi nakarhichit kvapicha dushtita matir labeta vata hatanori baspadam. Swarup Damodar Prabhu.
Whatever you desire to describe that is separate in vision from the Lord simply reacts with different forms, names, and results to agitate the mind, as the wind agitates a boat which has no resting place.
So it's not just that it's not satisfying, it agitates the mind. So then one starts thinking about, you know, what did Shakespeare want to say? And then, you know, people start arguing about, no, he wanted to say this, no, he wanted to say that. It doesn't really take you anywhere, and it just agitates the mind. And even if you don't start arguing, it agitates the mind because it creates more and more desires for sense gratification. It's not satisfying. It increases the material desires. And then Narada tells Vyasadeva that even you, in one sense, are guilty of this because you seem to have authorized their desires. Because you wrote so much about this Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha thing, you know, Dharma is doing religion to get money so you can satisfy your desires. Because you wrote so much about this, then to people it seems like that this is authorized. This is okay. This is the goal of the Vedas. And then they feel kind of quite good about themselves. I'm religious, I'm following the Vedas, I'm following Vyasadeva. He wrote about Dharma, Artha, Kama. This is the goal of the Vedas. And then they become so kind of settled in this that they don't really care about the prohibitions, and they don't really care about anything higher than this kind of 4 purusharthas. And they irresponsibly misuse their human form of life. So if any of you done any sailing, you know that if there is a storm when you're trying to sail and the boat is not anchored, then the waves, the wind, they just toss the boat all over the place. So in the same way, unless our mind is anchored with Krishna, then the boat of our mind is just thrown all over the place by the winds and the waves of material desires. We need to take shelter of Krishna. Jugupsitam dharma kritenu shasata svabhava raktasya mahan vyatikrama yadvakyato dharma itittarastito namanyate tasya nivaranam jana. Bhakti Vaibhava Prabhu.
The people in general are naturally inclined to enjoy, and you have to encourage them in a way, in the name of religion. That is very condemned and quite unreasonable. Because they are guided under your instructions, they will accept such activities in the name of religion and will hardly care for prohibitions.
Thank you. So it becomes a very convenient thing that I'm religious. Before I used to have this understanding, Prabhupada gives this example quite a lot, that people pray to God, please give me this day my daily bread, like this Christian idea. But I have to say that since I moved to Leicester, which has a huge Hindu population, I have a much deeper understanding of what Prabhupada was trying to explain. That so many Hindus, they feel they are quite religious, but their religion stops at, we go to the temple and we offer a little puja so we can get a good job and my children get good exam results and we can have lots of money and we can enjoy, and that's where it ends. There is nothing beyond that. So for them, religion is to get ahead in life. And it's better that they go to the temple and pray to God to get a good job than to completely just think that it all depends on themselves. So in one sense, it is something, but because that's the only thing that's emphasized, then they don't realize that there is something higher. This is when the good becomes the enemy of the best. So it's good that they turn to God, but then if they get stuck on that level, it becomes the enemy of the best. It becomes the enemy of understanding that that's not the actual goal of religion. So this is what Narada is explaining to Vyasadeva, that you talking too much about these 4 Purusharthas created this idea in people that that's the be-all and end-all of religion. Prabhupada in the purport, he says, the Vedas are meant for going back to Godhead. Okay, so they're not meant for Dharma, Artha, Kama, and not even impersonal moksha. They're meant for going back to Godhead. But, and a little bit later he says, one should never be encouraged in making a plan for sense enjoyment in the name of religious functions. Okay, and then later on in the purport, Prabhupada also says that there is a concession, for example, for meat eaters to eat meat, so that there is some connection, at least they can offer it to some demigod. But then people forget about even the demigods. It says that regulated sacrifices are recommended. They are so recommended to discourage flesh eating, but gradually the purpose of such religious activities is forgotten and the slaughterhouse remains prominent. So even though these Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha, they're supposed to help people kind of move up, gradually it's forgotten that the purpose is to move up, and all that remains is let's enjoy, and that's religion. And then in one sense, the Mahabharata is a perfect example of this, because even though Mahabharata has Bhagavad Gita in it, at the most exciting part of the whole Mahabharata, so people are open to it, and Bhagavad Gita ends with Sarva Dharmam Parityajya Mamekam Sharanam Vraja, give up all varieties of Dharma, all varieties of religion, and just surrender to me. So that's the conclusion, that's the essence. But there's so many other things happening in the Mahabharata that it kind of gets lost. So this is what's happening with all these literatures that Vyasadeva wrote so far. Okay, and then Prabhupada also says that people who are sick, a patient suffering from a particular type of malady is almost always inclined to accept eatables which are forbidden for him. An expert physician doesn't make any compromise with the patient by allowing him to take partially what he should not take at all. So the patient with this disease is the material disease, the sense enjoyment, and what he shouldn't take at all is sense enjoyment. So the doctor shouldn't let him, just take a little bit. You'll be okay, because then he can't be cured. This is the point Prabhupada is making. Okay. Vichakshanosyarhati veditam vipor anantaparasya nivrittita sukham pravartamanasya gunaryanatmanas tatho bhavan darshaya chestitam vipu. Yadurani? Ramananda Prabhu? Okay, let's have Charanarenu. Can you read the translation?
Yes, the Supreme Lord is unlimited. Only a very expert personality, retired from the activities of material happiness, deserves to understand this knowledge of spiritual values. Therefore, those who are not so well situated due to material attachment should be shown the ways of transcendental realization by your goodness, through descriptions of the transcendental activities of the Supreme Lord.
Okay, so Vyasadeva may ask the question, we are in this dark age of Kali. Who would want to read a book about Krishna that only glorifies Krishna and doesn't do anything else? So in here, Narada answers. He says, they're still discerning people. They're still people who have an interest. They may be very expert, retired from activities of material happiness. They'll be happy to read it, and then they will encourage others also to follow this example. And Narada is also glorifying Vyasadeva as a transcendental author. So this is another thing. Remember, this whole section is about, partly, one of the themes is relationship of spiritual master and disciple. So we can see that even though Narada in one sense is quite heavy with Vyasadeva, he's telling him all the hundreds of thousands of verses you wrote so far, you kind of distracted people from the real goal, but he's still very, very encouraging to him. So he says, what the service you did so far is not the best, but you have the ability to do the best service. So I'm going to kind of give you some guidance, and then based on that, you can do the most amazing service. Narada doesn't tell Vyasadeva, you're useless, you made a big mess, you kind of distracted people from self-realization, you should stand in a corner and feel bad. No, he says, you have the ability, think about Krishna's pastimes and then write something amazing. This was, what you just did was wrong, but this is how you can rectify it. Okay, and then this will come again and again in the next few verses in this chapter, Narada glorifying Vyasadeva. Oh, sorry. Any questions or any points so far? Can you follow the flow of the points that Narada is making? I can see Brajadevi nodding. I hope that everybody else is also okay. Charanarenu, okay. Jaksvasa dharmam charanam bhujam harer bhajana pakota patetato yadi yatrakvava bhadrama buddha mushyakim kovarta apto bhajatam swadharmata. Raghunath Bhatta Prabhu?
One who has forsaken his material occupations to engage in the devotional service of the Lord may sometimes fall down while in an immature stage, yet there is no danger of his being unsuccessful. On the other hand, a non-devotee, though fully engaged in occupational duties, does not gain anything.
Okay, so again, in this section, we again and again we see verses that compare material occupations with bhakti. So it says that somebody who gives up their material occupations, their swadharma in the sense of, their kshatriya duty, their brahmana duty, their vaishya duty, their kula dharma, like duties to their family. So if somebody gives this up to engage in devotional service, they may fall down when in the immature stage. There may be some distractions. It refers to kind of accidental, circumstantial fall down, not purposefully doing that. But there is no danger of being unsuccessful. So one needs to perform swadharma, if we have duties to our family, to society, to ourselves, we need to maintain ourselves. But all these swadharmas, none of them give eternal results. Only bhakti gives eternal results. So if one starts bhakti, and even if they have difficulties on the path, they will achieve ultimate success. Nothing that you ever did in bhakti will ever be lost. So sometimes you may feel a little discouraged. You know, I've been chanting for 5 years, 10 years, 30 years, and I'm, you know, where am I? But then if you think back, every single Hare Krishna mantra that you chanted, Krishna never forgets that. It's in your eternal bank account. Whereas any material thing you've ever done, it's gone. At latest when you die, it's gone. But usually it's gone long before then. So whatever you do in devotion is never lost. Whatever you do in material life is ultimately lost. Okay, and then in second chapter we also had verses about how even the goal of varnashram, all these kind of swadharma duties, is to please Krishna. And if it's not for the pleasure of Krishna, then it's shrama eva hi kevalam. Does anyone know what shrama eva hi kevalam means?
Useless waste of time.
Yeah, I knew Guru Bhakti will know. So it's useless work. It's, you know, when you try really, really hard, you put a lot of effort into something, and in the end you don't achieve anything. That's shrama eva hi kevalam, a big effort for nothing. So even if somebody very perfectly does their swadharmas, their material occupations, their varnashram duties, but it doesn't give pleasure to Krishna, then it's shrama eva hi kevalam. Okay, and then Prabhupada gives these examples of Chitraketu, Ajamil. We also have example of Bharat Maharaj, all these devotees who made a little mistake, they fell down, but ultimately they went back to Godhead. You know, the essence is still he was saved by the Lord at the end. This should give us a lot of encouragement in our life. Tasyaiva heto prateta covido nalabhyate yad pramatamuparyada talabhyate dukhavad anyata sukham kalena sarvatra gabira ramhasa. Nilachar Chandra Prabhu?
Persons who are actually intelligent and philosophically inclined should endeavor only for the purposeful end, which is not obtained even by wandering from the topmost planet Brahmaloka down to the lowest planet Vataloka. As far as happiness derived from sense enjoyment is concerned, it can be obtained automatically in course of time, just as in course of time we obtain miseries even though we do not desire them.
Thank you. So the point here is happiness, distress comes and goes automatically due to our karma. So don't endeavor for happiness, don't try too much to avoid distress, they will come anyway. So the effort should be for the people who are intelligent, they only endeavor for that which is eternal. Prabhupada says one should not endeavor for flimsy things. One should not therefore waste time with flimsy things. One should endeavor only to go back to Godhead. That should be the mission of everyone's life. There's a nice story I recently told in the school in collective worship, and it's very kind of appropriate here. There was once a king who was always very much affected by what's going on. Sometimes he would get really, really upset when things didn't go well in his kingdom, and other times, you know, when things went well, he was like really, really happy, and he just found all these kind of emotional roller coaster a bit too much. So he said, he called all the wise people in his kingdom and asked them, can someone, there's a ring, can someone engrave something on the ring that will make me happy when I'm sad, and it will make me sad when I'm happy? or make me kind of calm down when I'm happy, not get overly excited. So they were all thinking, how can we know one thing, how can that one thing make someone happy when they're sad and sad when they're happy? But eventually one of the wise people, he said, okay, just give me a few days and I'll come back. So he came back with the ring, and it was engraved in the ring, this too shall pass. So he says, when you're feeling sad, then pick up the ring. When you're feeling happy, pick up the ring. So then another country attacked his kingdom, and then they were fighting, and everything appeared to be lost. It was a very, very depressing situation. He took out the ring, and it says, this too shall pass. It won't last forever. And then eventually they managed to win, and there was big celebration in the palace, and everybody was really, really happy. And then he took out the ring again. This too shall pass. So it's not that we shouldn't be happy when things go well, but just don't get kind of too carried away. Appreciate the time, but don't get too carried away. So it's the same principle here. Happiness, distress, they come and go. Don't get too caught up in it. Our efforts should be for Krishna. Navajano jato katancha navrajen mukunda sevyan vayadanga samsritim smaran mukundangri upaguhanam punar vihatumichen narasagraho jana. Sneha, it's really good to see you. Are you able to read?
Yep. My dear Vyasa, even though a devotee of Lord Krishna sometimes falls down somehow or other, he certainly does not undergo material existence like others, fruitive workers, because a person who has once relished the taste of the lotus feet of the Lord can do nothing but remember that ecstasy again and again.
Thank you. So the results of bhakti are eternal, we said that. So everybody should develop an inclination to hear about Krishna. And once that taste is there, one can do nothing but remember that ecstasy again and again. Okay? I don't know if you remember in Nectar of Instruction, Prabhupada has this sentence, one will be forcibly dragged to ultimate success. Okay? So I'm sure we all have a little bit of this experience in life, that once you have a taste for devotional service, once you have a taste for hearing about Krishna, then sometimes it feels like it's even against your will, even against your will, you're doing the right thing. It's like that. So once you have relished this taste, you can do nothing but remember that ecstasy again and again. It's not just you remember how much satisfaction Krishna gives, it's also that you can't be satisfied with anything else. So that's why Rupa Goswami says that if you still want to enjoy material life with your family and friends, then make sure you don't look on Krishna, don't look upon the threefold bending form of Krishna, because once you look upon him, you won't be able to enjoy your family and friends. Okay. And then Prabhupada, in the purport, he speaks about how the sufferings of a devotee and the sufferings of a materialist are very different. So a devotee may also fall down and has to undergo material existence, just like karmis. But a devotee undergoing material existence, a devotee suffering is very different from a non-devotee and a materialist suffering. Prabhupada compares it to the suffering of an orphan child and the suffering of a prince. So with the orphan, there is nobody to look after him or her. He is just completely lost in the world. An orphan, the prince, the king's son, may also, prick his finger or whatever happens, but the king will make sure that he's properly looked after. And another point is that the suffering of a materialist is just suffering. It doesn't really lead anywhere. It's just pure misery. But the suffering of a devotee, if the devotee looks upon it in a devotional mood, then it actually takes him closer to Krishna. So difficulties, suffering, challenges in life, that would just be really, really painful, miserable things for a materialist. they can actually be a way to come closer to Krishna. In the material world, being helpless is the worst thing. But when a devotee feels helpless, it forces him to take shelter of Krishna. So it actually becomes a good thing. Prabhupada speaks about it in the purport. He says, a devotee who becomes helpless by the will of the Lord is more fortunate than those born in a good families. Because then we think that we can control things, we can solve things. Okay? Idam hi vishvam bhagavani vetaro yato jagatsthana nirodha sambhava tadhi swayam veda bhavam statapite pradesha matram bhavata pradarshitam. Yadurani, do you want to try reading again?
Hare Krishna, do you hear me?
Yeah, it's good now.
Because I don't know, I was reading and nobody could hear me, so now I can read. Okay, sorry. The Supreme Lord, Personality of Godhead, is Himself this cosmos, and still He is aloof from it. From Him only has this cosmic manifestation emanated. In Him it rests, and unto Him it enters after annihilation. Your good self knows all about this. I have given only a synopsis.
Thank you. So here again you can see Narada encouraging Vyasadeva. Your good self knows all about this. I've only given a synopsis. So you already know this. I'm just giving you some guidance. And this verse, remember all this section is about bhakti, the kind of glories of bhakti. So this verse speaks about the greatness of Krishna, the greatness of the Lord, how great He is, how small we are. So surrender to Him through the process of bhakti. Prabhupada in the purport explains that everyone belongs to Krishna, everyone is related to Krishna, even those who have forgotten Him. And then any sense of incompleteness or alienation is just an illusion. It's just because we forgot our connection with Krishna. Vishnu, He manifests this material world, or through Vishnu it manifests, and then into Vishnu, again, it enters at the end. And then still, those who are in illusion, they perceive themselves as separate from the Lord, but we should kind of work on trying to recreate this connection. Okay, so Narada is again and again encouraging Vyasadeva to speak about bhakti, speak about Krishna's glories, because otherwise people will be distracted. If you don't repeatedly, vividly describe Krishna's glories, then people will be distracted. Tvamatmanatmanam avehya mogajik parasya pumsa paramatmanam kalam ajam prajatam jagata shivayatan mahanubhava bhyudayo diganyatam. Guru Bhakti?
Your goodness has perfect vision. You yourself can know the super soul personality of Godhead, because you are present as the plenary portion of the Lord. Although you are birthless, you have accepted on this earth for the well-being of all people. Although you are birthless, you have appeared on this earth for the well-being of all people. Please, therefore, describe the transcendental pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Shri Krishna, more vividly.
Thank you. So this is again Narada encouraging Vyasadeva. But not just that. He says that you are a plenary portion of the Lord. So you are an incarnation of the Lord. You are birthless. So he says you are an incarnation of the Lord. Still, as your spiritual master, I'm giving you guidance. And even though Vyasadeva is an incarnation of the Lord, to set an example for all of us, he also accepts a spiritual master. So it says, Prabhupada says in the purport, although formally Srila Narada is his spiritual master. Srila Vyasadeva is not at all dependent on a spiritual master, because in essence, he is the spiritual master of everyone. Remember, we say Vyasa Puja when we celebrate the birthday of the spiritual master. It's Vyasa Puja because Vyasa is the original spiritual master. But because he's doing the work of an acharya, somebody who teaches by example, he taught us by his own conduct that one must have a spiritual master even though he is God himself. Lord Shri Krishna, Lord Shri Ram, and Lord Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, all incarnations of Godhead, but accepted former spiritual master, although by their transcendental nature they were cognizant of all knowledge. So even though they know everything, to teach us, they accepted spiritual masters. And a very interesting thing, when Shukadev Goswami was speaking Srimad Bhagavatam to Parikshit Maharaj, in the audience, there was Narada Muni sitting there was Vyasadeva sitting there. So they weren't thinking, Vyasadeva wasn't thinking, I wrote the Srimad Bhagavatam, he's my son, I'm not going to listen to him. Narada wasn't thinking, I told Vyasadeva to write the Srimad Bhagavatam, I told him what to write, I'm not going to, sit here, listen to Shukadev Goswami. They were sitting there and listening, and they weren't just, okay, I listened to him to kind of do quality assurance of his class. Is it okay, are there any mistakes? But they were actually sitting there, hearing Shukadev Goswami, and they were in ecstasy. Because they, every time somebody speaks Srimad Bhagavatam, somebody who's like Shukadev Goswami, then there is newer and newer realizations, newer and newer ecstasy that comes from it. So Narada and Vyasadeva, even though they, Vyasadeva wrote the Srimad Bhagavatam, he got more from it when hearing it from his son and disciple. Okay. Charanarenu?
Just these plenary portions and parts of a plenary portion. Is a plenary portion, is it closer to Krishna than a part of a plenary portion? So plenary portion has more of Krishna's qualities, is it, than a... I'm just trying to understand the difference between the plenary portion and part of a plenary.
There is a whole science behind it. I read an article on it. I don't remember all the exact details, but the first few verses of the Chaitanya Charitamrita okay. So here it says Yasyamsha Kala. So the Yasya, whose Amsha is plenary portion, Kala, part of the plenary portion. So this is the first verse, and this speaks, as far as I remember, about Mahavishnu. So this was Yasyamsha Kala. Then the next one is not this one, maybe even the next one after that. Sorry if I get... There is one verse when it says Yasyam Sham Sham Shah, like so many. Yeah, it's here. So Yasya Amsha Amsha. So it's like a part of a part of a part of a portion. So it's like as they expand from each other. In one sense, Prabhupada sometimes says that they are all like candles, that the original candle lights the other candles, but at the same time they are not the original candles. So it's one of these, and only Krishna has full Purna Purusha, full qualities of everything, full qualities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Did it kind of help you understand a little? So this Sham 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 Shah, the part of a part of a part. Okay. Okay. Idam hi pumsa tapasa shutasya va svishtasya suktasya cha buddhidattayo avichyutorta kavibir nirupito yaduttama shloka gunanuvarnanam. Vrijadevi?
Learned circles have positively concluded that the infallible purpose of the advancement of knowledge, namely austerity, study of the Vedas, sacrifice, chanting of hymns, and charity, culminates in the transcendental descriptions of the Lord, who is defined in choice poetry.
Okay. So Prabhupada in the purport speaks about how Krishna is the source of all, Krishna is the source of everything and everyone. So all intelligence, skills, talents should be used in his glorification and service. And then by that we develop love for Krishna, and we also help others develop love for Krishna. So if all these things, art, science, philosophy, physics, chemistry, all these things are used for anything other than glorifying Krishna, then they create misery for us, they create misery for everyone else. But if these things are used to glorify Krishna, then they purify us, they uplift us, and they purify and uplift everyone else as well. So Narada is again telling Vyasadeva, you're a transcendental author, you've been empowered to write spiritual literature, so use this empowerment. Just as all science, philosophy, physics, everything should be used to glorify Krishna, you should also use all these skills to glorify Krishna. So write literature that there's a greater emphasis on Krishna. And then as you go through the purport, Prabhupada gives like all these different talents that can be used, like writing, poetry, literature, science, philosophy, all these different things should be, all other branches of knowledge should always be engaged in the service of the Lord. And he says, all knowledge not engaged in the service of the Lord is nescience, or is ignorance. So again, if you remember Ishopanishad, remember the vidya and avidya. So vidya, or knowledge that's not used in Krishna's service, is actually avidya, is ignorance, because it's taking you more and more into the darkness of the material world. Okay. So from the next verse, Narada will give himself as the example. Remember in chapter 2, we had this whole kind of progression of bhakti. So Shraddha, Sadhusanga, Bhajana Kriya, and then Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur had a more detailed one. So we had this whole progression. And here, these verses, the next 6 or 7 verses, they give like a case study. So when you learn something in theory, let's say anger management, you kind of go through what are the triggers of anger and how do you kind of, that manifests in the body as certain feelings, and then that kind of comes out, in actions or in words. How can it be controlled? And then there's a case study. There was such and such person, Jim, who got really angry every time he heard the rain kind of knocking on the window or whatever, every time somebody said no to him. And he felt a red mist descending on him, and then these were the things that he would do, he would shout at his wife and kick the cat and whatever. And then this was the thing, how he actually managed to overcome his anger. So it kind of personalizes it. It's a case study. So Narada is doing the same thing. He personalizes this progression of bhakti. That this is what we're going to read about in the next few verses, how this progression of bhakti actually happens in someone's life. Aham puratita bhave bhavam mune dasyasya tu kasyaschana vedavadinam nirupito balaka eva yoginam sushrushane pravrishi nirvivikshatam. Bhaktivinoda Prabhu?
Many in the last millennium, I was born a son of a certain maid servant engaged in the service of Brahmanas who were following the principles of Vedanta. They were living Together, during the 4 months of the rainy season, I was engaged in their personal service.
Okay. So this is the start, it's in the last millennium. So it didn't happen now, it actually happened in a previous day of Brahma. So it wasn't just like in a previous Dvapara Yuga or Kali Yuga, it's a previous day of Brahma. And bit by bit we'll read about the story, but in the purport, Prabhupada makes several points, several very important points. One is that service to the Lord starts with service to the devotees. So this is something really, really important to understand. It's not that we should only try to serve Krishna and, serving the deities is important, but I don't care about the devotees. My service is cooking for the deities, the devotees don't matter. So if we have to choose, in some ways it's better to serve the devotees. Krishna really appreciates that. I'm not saying don't cook for the deities, but just don't minimize the importance of serving devotees. Prabhupada even says that the service to the devotees is more valuable than service to the Lord. Little hint. And then he also says that one should choose a bona fide servant of the Lord who constantly engaged in this servant and then serve him. So it's also important that we are a little bit careful. Of course, we should serve all devotees. But let's say who we hear from, who we associate with more closely, we should be a little bit discriminating. So the devotees who help us become uplifted in devotional service, devotees who nourish our Krishna consciousness, they are the ones we should associate with more closely and have more association. But we should serve all devotees. And then Prabhupada also says that the Lord reveals himself in proportion to the service rendered. Okay, and then Prabhupada at the end makes this really wonderful point. He says, the expert spiritual master knows the art of utilizing everything to glorify the Lord, and therefore under his guidance the whole world can be turned into the spiritual abode by the divine grace of the Lord's servant. I was reading this and I was thinking, I'm going on the street, it's a really horrible day, it's raining, it's super miserable, it's winter in England, very grey. But by engaging in Krishna service under the guidance of our spiritual master, the whole world can turn into Vrindavan, the abode of the Lord, the wonderful Goloka Vrindavan. So the rain may still be there, the miseries of, grayness and darkness may still be there, but we don't actually live there anymore because we are in Vrindavan, at least consciousness-wise. So this should be hopefully a little encouraging next time you have to go out in the rain and the cold and the darkness and the misery. That if we serve Krishna under the guidance of our spiritual master, then the high street of our town or city can be turned into Goloka Vrindavan. Okay. Te maya pita kila chapalarbake dante drita kridana ke nuvartini chakru kripam yatyapitulya darshana shushrushamane munayor pabhasini. Sneha?
Although they were impartial by nature, those followers of the Vedanta blessed me with their causeless mercy. As far as I was concerned, I was self-controlled and had no attachment for sports, even though I was a boy. In addition, I was not naughty and I did not speak more than required.
Okay, so Narada gives his own qualities. This is very rare for children. And it's not that, we want to completely suppress children and stop them from playing. But Narada is giving these qualities to show that to kind of focus on Krishna, then these kind of frivolous pursuits should be minimized. Prahlad Maharaj was very similar, even though he was just a child. And usually children, all they want to do is play. But even devoted children, you can see that sometimes they choose devotional service instead of playing. They're happy to sit through a class. They're happy to worship their little deities. They're happy to help their parents or help others, worship Krishna, because there is that devotion in their heart. I have a little question for you. Prabhupada says, Lord Shri Chaitanya says that in the Vedas, the subject matters are only three. Namely, to establish the relation of the living entities with the personality of Godhead, perform the relative duties in devotional service, and thus achieve the ultimate goal back to Godhead. So what are these three things?
Sambandha, Abhidheya, and Prayojana.
Perfect. Okay. So Prabhupada says there's only three things in the Vedas: Sambandha, Abhidheya, and Prayojana. How to find out about Krishna, how to establish the relationship with Krishna, how to act in that relationship, and how to achieve the ultimate goal, prema, going back to Godhead. Okay. When you read Prabhupada's purports, if you read carefully, you can notice these little things. It's a good kind of little exercise. Okay. And then Prabhupada in the purport, he elaborates on Varnashram, how to train children in Varnashram so they become successful in devotional service. It says, the irresponsible life of sense enjoyment was unknown to the children of the followers of the Varnashram system. Okay, so people shouldn't just have children out of enjoyment or thinking, oh, I'll have a cute little baby to love, but to give someone a chance to go back to Godhead. Okay. Ujishtale pananamodito dvijay sakritsma bunje tadapasta kilbishai evam pravrittasya vishudha chetasa tadharma evatma ruchi prajayate. Guru Bhakti?
Once only, by their permission, I took the remnants of their food, and by so doing all my sins were at once eradicated. Thus, being engaged, I became purified in heart, and at that time the very nature of the transcendentalist became the very nature of the transcendentalist became attractive to me.
Thank you. So the remnants of a devotee's food, Maha Prasadam, has a very powerful purifying effect. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, especially towards the end, there is a whole chapter almost dedicated to the purifying effect of Maha Prasadam. So it's the food remnants, the food dust, and the water that washed the feet of great devotees. These are three very powerful remnants that we should make every effort to try to get. Prabhupada in the purport says that they are infectious in a good sense. So when we eat food that's, somebody is sick, maybe they have diarrhea or cholera or something. If we eat their food, then we also catch that disease. But then if we eat the food remnants of pure devotees, then we also catch their pure devotion. The Prabhupada also makes the point that we should be very much cautious not to eat the remnants of pseudo devotees, because then we catch the pseudo devotion. Okay, Ramananda Prabhu?
It's a bit of an awkward question, but I thought I'd throw it out there anyway. So in that regard, very often as devotees, we in an attempt to genuinely try to sort of be humble and see the good in others and glorify other devotees, then we may say, oh, you're such a wonderful devotee, let me sort of eat the remnants of your food, and what is the sort of criteria? Like, how does one actually decide whether someone's remnants are to be eaten or not to be eaten? What's the criteria in that regard for determining that someone is a pure devotee? I should take their remnants. I don't know how to word it in such a way that it doesn't sort of come across the wrong way, because I'm not trying to be cynical, but at the same time also, we want to do the best for ourselves.
So how would you decide?
I don't really know. I'd not really thought about it too much until it came up just now.
Okay, so, but you do take some devotees' remnants, right?
Yeah.
So then,
I mean, it's, generally we just see others as being more advanced than ourselves. Definitely more advanced than ourselves. We may or may not know, I don't know that I have the qualification to say this person is a pure devotee, but I can be quite confident that someone is certainly more advanced than me and certainly doing better than me in their Krishna consciousness. And so I would say, whatever blessings I can receive from that devotee is only going to be good for me. But what exactly is it that's being referred to here? Is it that just out of humility, anyone that we see as better than ourselves, we should take the remnants of their food? Or is it referring to a specific quality or category of devotee?
the pastime that's described in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, that devotee, I don't remember his name just now. He just, and any devotee, he was even doing things like buying mangoes, giving them the mangoes, because he knew that they're not going to give me their remnants. They fear that they're really lowly. They're not going to give me their remnants. So they bought the mangoes, they gave them the mangoes, and then, the devotee ate the mango. His wife kind of sucked the seed, whatever was left, and then they threw it out in the garbage next to their house. So this devotee was kind of sneaking in, after they left or in the dark, to kind of get these mango seeds. So it was a whole plan. So he was just, anybody who's a devotee, I want to get their blessings. When Prabhupada says pseudo devotees, that refers to someone who pretends to be a devotee. He doesn't say neophyte devotees or someone who's not pure devotee, not advanced, but pseudo devotees. That means somebody who pretends to be a devotee, but their actual heart is not towards Krishna. Their heart's inclination is not towards Krishna, but name, fame, their own name, fame. That's my understanding of these pseudo devotees or non-pseudo devotees. And Prabhupada says that these remnants can be taken even without permission. And this devotee in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, that's exactly what he did. Anyone else has some thoughts on Charanarenu?
I was just wondering, does it also depend on the consciousness that you take those remnants in? So if you take remnants in the consciousness of appreciating that devotee, then you're more likely to get the benefit than rather if you take the remnants and you're thinking, oh, they might not be a pure devotee, I'm not sure, or it's some good. Like if you're taking them and not really appreciating that devotee, then maybe the effect might be different.
That's a really good point. Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah. Thank you. Anything else?
So could it be said also that whether or not the devotee themselves, whose remnants they are, regardless of, how pure or, to what degree they are a pure devotee, that also Krishna reciprocates with a devotee's humility. That if a devotee is humble enough to see the good and to see the purity in others and to so much want the blessings and the good qualities of other devotees that they're willing to fight for the remnants of those devotees' food, then Krishna himself reciprocates with that
Yeah.
humility, and Krishna sort of gives blessings.
Yeah.
Would that be a correct way?
Yeah. And then pure can be pure by attainment and pure by intention. So pure by attainment is somebody whose heart is completely pure, and that's pure by attainment, and pure by intention means that he wants, his goal is to become a pure devotee of Krishna. Okay.
Can I say something?
Please.
It's sometimes not recommended to take, if you're not on the level, maybe you said this, but if you're not on the level of pure, it's best not to take food from anybody and everybody who is a devotee. And even I've heard that the parents are not usually recommended to take the remnants of their kids, even if the kids are devotees. It should be vice versa. The children should take the remnants of their parents. So best is just to before taking prasadam we should be sure that the person is advanced, because otherwise we might suffer
I guess it just connects to what Charanarenu was saying, that we should be sure that the person is advanced, meaning if we have that humility, or if we have that consciousness that they are advanced, that they can help us advance, if we appreciate their good qualities, then the blessings are there. If we are not sure that they advanced, then we don't take it. The blessings are not there. But it's not an artificial thing. It's not that you can force yourself to think that somebody is advanced and take their Mahaprasadam. It's an attitude that's there naturally.
Can I just add one little anecdote? It was I'm paraphrasing it, but there's one letter by Srila Prabhupada. It's a slightly different category because it's talking about guests who visit a temple rather than devotees themselves. But Srila Prabhupada said to the effect that if there's prasadam left over after like a Sunday feast, then prasadam shouldn't be wasted, but at the same time, the remnants of guests' prasadam shouldn't be taken unless the devotees themselves have got the vision to understand the transcendental nature of prasadam. It's kind of, they shouldn't just take it because it's prasadam, because if it's remnants of guests, then only if you have a certain transcendental elevated understanding of the nature of prasadam, otherwise you'll be infected by any negative consciousness that might be there. So I know it's a slightly different sort of category, but I thought it's somewhat related. It'd be interesting to share it.
Yeah. So the consciousness, just like Charanarenu said, the consciousness you have affects the outcome of the same thing. Okay, here I just kind of summarize some of the effects of taking the remnants of pure devotees. So these are things Prabhupada mentions: initial attraction to the name, fame, pastimes of the Lord, taste for pure devotion, attraction to material activities gradually eliminated and relieved of all sins. And here I just kind of copy-pasted a bit from the purport, this 525 purport. And if you go through it, you can see these stages, that all material things become distasteful, anartha nivritti, or elimination of sins and obstacles can be anartha nivritti. One becomes attracted, steadiness, nishta, perfect taste, asakti, transcendental emotions, bhava, loving service of the Lord, prema. So these stages that we kind of learn about, they are described by Prabhupada as the result of taking the remnants of pure devotees. Or here he says, all these stages developed by the association of the pure devotees. Okay, so association, remnants may not be necessarily food, remnants hearing from them or serving them. Okay. It's an interesting discussion about pseudo devotees and whose prasadam we should avoid or not avoid. Tatranvaham Krishna Katha Pragayatam Anugrahena Shranavam Manoharan Tashadayami Nupadam Vishinvata Priyashravasya Mama Bhavatruchi. Yadurani, are you able to read?
Yes. Oh, Vyasadev, in that association, and by the mercy of those great Vedantis, I could hear them describe the attractive activities of Lord Krishna, and thus listening attentively, my taste for hearing of the personality of Godhead increased at every step.
Thank you. So, in the purport, Prabhupada summarizes what's going to happen after Narada taking the Mahaprasadam. And these are all the different stages: association, mercy, taste. It kind of matches the whole thing. And then Prabhupada also speaks about hearing, propensity. Hearing mundane things makes the heart kind of more cluttered up with the mundane desires, attraction to the things that we hear about. And then hearing about Krishna, then the heart becomes purified, we become more and more attracted to Krishna. So hearing and speaking about Krishna are not mundane activities like hearing and speaking about material people. Okay. Tasminstada labdarucher mahamate priyashravasya skalitamatir mama yasyahametad sadasad svamayaya pashyemai brahmani kalpitam pare. Bhakti Vaibhava Prabhu?
Oh, great sage, as soon as I got a taste of the personality of Godhead, my attention to hear of the Lord was unflinching, and any taste developed, I could realize that it was only in my ignorance that I had accepted gross and subtle coverings for both the Lord and I are transcendental.
Thank you. So this little taste, in the beginning there was a little taste, little attraction to hearing, but then it became an addiction. It became an unflinching, strong desire. Prabhupada says that to become associated with the Supreme Light is to dissipate all ignorance. So if you associate with, if you get an attraction for hearing about Krishna, then all ignorance is dissipated. And then Prabhupada also explains that how both the gross and subtle bodies become purified by engaging them in Krishna's service. He says, the gross body should be engaged in acts of rendering service to the Lord, bringing water, cleaning the temple, making obeisances. This is archana or deity worship. And then the subtle mind should be engaged in hearing about Krishna, thinking about them, chanting his names. So these are the ways to purify the gross body, physical devotional service, especially archana, deity worship, and the subtle body, mind, intelligence, ego are purified by hearing about Krishna, remembering Krishna, thinking about Krishna. And the points made here that Narada Muni was in the association of devotees hearing about Krishna. So we kind of hear this all the time, Shravanam, Kirtanam, association of devotees, etc. We kind of don't take it that seriously. But as we study the Bhagavatam, we'll see that all these great devotees who kind of, Krishna appears to them and says, ask me for any benediction. And the benediction they always ask for is, let me hear your glories in the association of devotees. So they could have asked for anything. They could have asked for liberation. They could have asked for, let me go back to Godhead. Let me become free from suffering, whatever. The thing that they ask again and again and again and again, let me hear your glories let me hear Krishna Katha in the association of devotees. So you have Prahlad Maharaj, Dhruva Maharaj, Prithu Maharaj, Kapila Dev, Prachetas, again and again and again. This is Sadhu Sangha Krishna Katha. This is what they want. So hearing is very, very effective. And the real value of Vaishnava association is this opportunity to hear about Krishna, hear Krishna Katha. Okay, let's do one more verse and then I want to kind of explain something. Itam sharad pravrishika vrito harer vishrinvato me nusavam yasho malam sankirtyamanam munimir mahatma bir bhakti pravrittatma rajastamopaha. Thus, during 2 seasons, the rainy season and autumn, I had the opportunity to hear these great souled sages constantly chant the unadulterated glories of the Lord Hari. As the flow of my devotional service began, the coverings of the modes of passion and ignorance vanished. So by hearing about Krishna, these lower modes, rajas, tamas, they disappear. Prabhupada says in the purport that transcendental loving service to the Supreme Lord is natural inclination for every living entity. It's dormant, but because this passion and ignorance, they cover it since time immemorial. But if by the grace of the Lord and the great soul devotees of the Lord, the person becomes fortunate enough to associate with these devotees, he can get a chance to hear Krishna's glories, and the flow of devotional service takes place like the flow of a river. So when a river flows, I'm sure you've all seen big rivers, if there is an obstacle, then the river either goes over the obstacles or around the obstacle. It doesn't stop the flow of the river. So our devotional service should be similar. If an obstacle comes up, we either go over it or we go around it. We just carry on flowing towards Krishna. Our attention should carry on flowing towards Krishna. Okay. And then Prabhupada makes this really sweet point that the flow of devotional service is so potent that any onlooker also becomes liberated from the influence of modes of passion and ignorance. It's not just the devotees who do it, but those who see it. So of course it shouldn't kind of encourage us that we'll just sit at the sidelines and then watch other devotees do devotional service, because I'll also be liberated by then. But then it should give us encouragement if we go out on Harinam or book distribution, even people who just see us doing that, for the time being they become liberated from the lower modes, and also that may be the start of their devotional service. That starts the uncovering, just like Prabhupada gives this, or Rupa Goswami gives this example, that the walking propensity is already there in a child when they are born, and then with the practice and with association they learn. So a lion doesn't learn to walk no matter how much it practices and no matter how much it associates with people. But a child, if it practices, if it sees how adults walk or bigger children walk, then it learns. And if children don't get that association, sometimes children are lost in a forest or something, they don't see people walk, then they also don't learn to walk. So you need both the association to see other people and the practice. So this is the uncovering of this dormant propensity for devotional service, just like for walking. Okay. I wanted to make this, just explain this little bit for the devotees who do the exams and the devotees who want to get the certificate at the end. I put up these open book questions. So this is for module 1, which means it's up to chapter 9, up to and including chapter 9 of first canto, that's module 1. So we still have time, we're kind of almost halfway through, so that's why I wanted to make this point. So these open book questions, you have 12 questions. You don't have to answer all of them. You need to write altogether 2,000 words. That means you can answer 2 questions, 1,000 words each, or 3 questions, or 4 questions. But if you do 4 questions, then maybe 500 words each, or something like that, or a little bit longer, a little bit less. But altogether, it should be 2,000 words. And then you pick any questions that kind of feels resonate with you, or any question that, oh, I really want to research this, I really want to kind of think more deeply about this and write an essay on it. So you read through the questions and decide which ones you want to choose, and then write an essay. I just put up some examples here. This is from like a completely different part of the Bhagavatam, the 4th canto. But here we have one question about what general principles can a sadhaka derive from Prithu Maharaj's unwillingness to accept praise. And then you got like 700 odd words. Make sure you got some references. You can do it this way, but you don't have to do it this way. You can put it inside the essay, but it's easier to see the word count if you put it as footnotes. Okay, and so that's 1700. Another question: Krishna gives more credit to his devotees than he takes for himself. And then an essay on this. And then, how does Srila Prabhupada explain the word Madirekshana? How does this explanation inspire you to refer to Rudra Gita? Okay, I didn't want to put up from the first module because you need to do your own, you find your own questions and your own answers, but this is the kind of general idea of how to do these questions. And you can put all 2, 3, 4 questions into one document and then just upload it how you would normally do. Like those who did the Bhakti Shastri, they will know. Those who didn't, if you're struggling to upload it, the thing is already there. The link to upload it is already in the classroom. If you're struggling, then let me know and then I can help you with that. Any questions relating to this or anything you want to clarify? Okay, so this is a very wonderful part of Bhakti Vaibhava, writing these essays. You will find as you kind of research it, think about it, it will be really, really nice. Okay, so all the best. Sorry for going a little bit over time. Thank you for your association. Really appreciate it. Have a wonderful week, and then see you next Wednesday. We probably have 2, maybe 3 more classes on this section, and then we have the next closed book exam. Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, ki jai. Sadhu Sangha ki jai. Nitai event Prabhupada Rubishta Kripa Sindhu.
Thank you so much.
Very well. Really good to see you all.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.